Jai Hind, dear students, I am Dr. Preeti Mittal, and today we are going to study the female reproductive system and the menstrual cycle. In females, the age of puberty is marked by appearance of menstrual cycle, development of breast. Apart from that, there is appearance of hair in the body, that is especially at the armpit, that is also known as axilla, and in the pubic area. So these are the some changes that are going to occur in a female at the age of puberty. And these changes marks that the sexual maturity of a female has started. This sexual maturity of a male as well as a female is usually marked with a decrease in the general body growth, because now our body is focusing more on the growth of the reproductive organs, and so the generalized growth of the body usually decreases at this age of puberty. Now, if we talk about just the female reproductive system, let's see about the various organs that are involved in the female reproductive system and their functions. So, in case of females, the first primary sexual organ, primary reproductive organ is the ovary, where there is ovum formation. Ovum is the female gamete. So, this ovum or the female gamete will be formed in the ovary. But do you know, very interesting, that in case of a baby girl, when she is born, at that time only the ovary contains many immature eggs. Many immature eggs are present in a female ovary when she is born. At the time of birth only the ovary of a female contains many eggs, but these are all immature and will remain immature up to the age of puberty. When the age of puberty starts, these eggs starts maturing, and one egg gets mature every month. Approximately just one egg every month gets mature, and it comes from the ovary into a tube-like structure, and this tube-like structure is known as oviduct because it's carrying the ovum, so it's called oviduct, or it's also known as fallopian tube, and such as leading to the uterus, a bag-like structure, that is uterus, so it's also known as uterine tube. So any of the three terms you can remember, just one out of what three you can remember. It's known as oviduct or it's called a fallopian tube. Now, when the ovary is producing the ovum, that is the female gamete, then this female gamete is going to come into the uterine tube or fallopian tube. Apart from producing the female gamete, our ovary performs one more function, that is the production of hormones. Ovary also acts like an endocrine gland and it produces hormones like estrogen and progesterone. These are the hormones which are produced by the ovary, estrogen and progesterone, and these hormones only regulates the menstrual cycle also. Now, when the ovum comes into the fallopian tube, it remains there for approximately 1 day. Apart from that, what are the organs? Let's study and then we'll see what will happen to that ovum. So, this ovary uterine tube or oviduct, both the uterine tube are going to open into a bag-like structure, a muscular structure that is mainly made up of muscles, a muscular structure that is known as uterus. This uterus is also common in common language, it's also known as womb. So if you see the word womb, don't get confused, it's the other name for uterus only. Then the last part of the uterus is surrounded by the vagina. This vagina is the part that is going to open outside the body. So that outside opening is known as vagina, and the last part of the uterus is surrounded by the vagina. This last part of the uterus which is surrounded by the vagina is known as cervix. So this last part of the uterus is only known as cervix. Cervix is a part of uterus only. Okay. So both the fallopian tube are going to open into a muscular bag-like structure known as uterus. This uterus, the last part of the uterus is cervix, which opens into the vagina. This vagina is the opening through which it is going to, the things are going to come out of the body, that is connected with the external environment. When the sperms enter, they enter through the vagina, pass through the cervix, then enter the uterus, and then they reach the fallopian tube. If the ovum is released, and within till one day it's going to be there in the fallopian tube. The egg once released, or the female gamete once released, it remains in the fallopian tube for one day. During this time, if the sperms are present and if they have ascended into the fallopian tube, then fertilization, that is the fusion of the male and the female gamete, that leads to the formation of zygote. So that fertilization is going to take place in the fallopian tube. Remember that, it's a very important question as a 1 mark question, that what is the site of fertilization. So the site of fertilization of male and female gamete is the fallopian tube or oviduct. Once the fertilization takes place, a zygote is formed. Zygote is formed by the fusion of the male and female gamete. They join together and form the first single cell, that is called the zygote. This zygote then starts developing, that starts dividing. The cells of the zygote, the single cell divides into 2, and 2 into 4, 4 into 8. So that keeps on dividing and forms the embryo. This embryo then comes into the uterus. Okay. This embryo is implanted in the uterus walls. The walls of the uterus, that is going to be, the embryo is going to implant itself, means gets attached with the uterine wall. And then this embryo is going to divide further, develop further. All the organs will be formed from that embryo, and that then it is known as a fetus. Once the organs are formed and identifiable, then we call it as a fetus. So the fetus is going to develop completely in the mother's uterus. Once it develops completely, then it's going to come out of the body, passing through the cervix and the vagina. But before that, let's talk about when the embryo is developing in the mother's uterus, then it requires all the nutrition. The mother's body supplies all the nutrition to the growing embryo through the mother's blood. All the glucose, proteins, whatever is required for the formation of the body, all the calcium and everything goes from the mother's body into the baby. Okay. And for this, the uterus has to be prepared. So before the embryo gets implanted in the uterus, before that only the uterus prepares itself every month. Every month the inner lining of the uterus is going to, this is the inner lining of the uterus, the innermost part of the uterus. This is going to prepare itself, that in case fertilization takes place, then the embryo is going to come into the uterus. How it prepares itself? It produces more mucus and more blood capillaries develop in the inner lining of the uterus. If fertilization takes place, then the embryo is going to come up into the uterus, it's going to develop in the uterus. And so what will be formed for the nourishment of that baby, of that growing baby? That is a placenta. So a disc-like structure is formed that attaches itself on the mother's side. There is a disc-like structure, and on the baby side there are many villi-like structures are there, and that is going to just be connected to the baby, to the growing embryo. This structure, which provides a connection between the mother and the baby, is known as placenta. So this structure is placenta. This placenta is going to be formed once the baby starts developing in the uterus. And through this placenta only, the baby gets all the blood, all the glucose, oxygen, nutrients, proteins, calcium for the development of bones. Everything from the mother's body goes into the developing baby. Now, whatever excretory products are formed, whatever waste is produced, whatever carbon dioxide, nitrogenous waste is produced, that also goes from the embryo to the mother's body through the same structure, placenta only. So this placenta is going to pass on all the nutrients to the baby, and all the waste from the baby to the mother's body also will be passed through the placenta only. The baby is going to develop completely inside a mother's body, which approximately takes 9 months. In case of human beings, the approximate time duration which is taken by the baby to grow in the mother's body is approximately 9 months. For 9 months, the baby is going to develop in the mother's uterus. Then when the baby has developed completely, then the uterus muscles starts contraction. The uterus muscles starts contracting, and so the baby comes out of the cervix, passing through the vagina into the outside world. So that is a normal condition when the baby is going to develop in the mother's uterus. But usually what would happen? All this we have discussed was if the fertilization is there. This fertilization is going to take place like twice or just once or just twice in a mother's life. But every month, what is going to happen to the uterine walls? Every month, the uterine walls develop itself, looking at the possibility of a fertilization. But in case fertilization doesn't happen, then what is going to happen? If fertilization doesn't take place, then the extra growth of the inner lining of the uterus is no more required. Whatever extra growth was there in the uterus, mucus was developed, blood capillaries were developed, they are no longer required. And so they are expelled out of the body, passing through the cervix and the vagina. So whatever extra growth was there, whatever extra mucus, blood capillaries were developed, now the body is not going to continue with that. The fertilization has not taken place, and so whatever extra growth was there, that will be removed from the body, and this mucus, blood, that is going to come out of the body, passing through the vagina, and that only is known as menstruation. This flow of mucus and blood continues for approximately 2 to 7 days, varying from one person to another. And this is a cyclical change that is going to happen every month. Every month, one ovum will be produced from in the ovary, it will get mature and it will come into the fallopian tube. If fertilization doesn't take place, then the unfertilized egg along with the extra lining of the uterus that is going to come out of the body, and this is a cyclic change that is going to happen every month. Approximately it takes 28 days. So this cyclical changes is only known as menstrual cycle or menstruation. Okay, so that is all about the female reproductive system. Quickly we are going to revise once more. The ovary is a site where the female gamete will be formed, as well as it will also produce some hormones, that is estrogen and progesterone. These hormones are important for the development of the female gamete as well as for the regulation of menstrual cycle. Now, once the ovum is formed, it comes into the fallopian tube. This fallopian tube is a site of fertilization. If fertilization takes place, then the ovum is going to develop in the uterus. Okay. Once it develops completely, then it's going to pass out through the body, passing through the cervix and then through the vagina. That's all about the female reproductive system. I hope the things are clear to you all. If you want, you can take a screenshot, but the diagram is the same that's given in your NCERT book. So I'll just shift to side and you can take a screenshot. That's all for this video. Good day everyone.